This movie is so silly, both in a good way and a not so good way. I hate being the bearer of bad news, but don't worry. This review is split down the middle, as you can see, in terms of the good and the bad. But one thing that I think is very interesting is that now that I've seen the film, as much as we want our big blockbusters now, we're tired of waiting. I think we should have waited a little bit longer for this one. I think that Warner Brothers should have held Godzilla vs. Kong until later in the summer, when more people would feel comfortable going to theaters. But oh well, they didn't. And I'm very curious to see what the box office is like. I'm curious to see if people go. Now, I tried very hard to like this movie. I really did. And at points, I succeeded. But at other points, I did not. So I think this movie will be the most popular with die-hard old-school kaiju fans who just want to see Godzilla versus Kong versus Mechagodzilla. As I saw someone on the internet say, the worst kept secret of all time. And on that front, when it comes to kaiju fights, the movie definitely delivers. But if those names mean nothing to you, if you're not like, oh my God, I'm going to see Mechagodzilla, and you see a lot of Mechagodzilla, but if you're not like, oh my God, it's my dream come true, then you're going to need a lot of snacks to get through this movie. You'll still have a good time, but make sure you have lots of snacks. Now, this is a non-spoiler review. Even though this movie has been playing overseas for about a week now, and a large part of it is leaked. That's also a weird approach from Warner Brothers, because, you know, they were working very hard to try and undercut the Snyder Cut. But anyway, whatever. But again, no spoilers here. My spoiler review, because there is a lot to discuss, will go up on Wednesday when the film releases in the US and on HBO Max. And I know it's hitting a couple of countries right after that. So I'm trying to be right in the middle. Now, in the spirit of everyone having a good time, we just want to have a good time, man. I'm going to start with the good, the positives, before I talk about the not so good. So the good, the kaiju fights, obviously, which is why anyone would want to see this movie in the first place. I was surprised there are only I'd say 3 fights in a movie that's about 2 hours long. So you would think that for Godzilla vs. Kong, it would just be non-stop Godzilla vs. Kong, but I guess that's too expensive. But and they spent a lot of money on this movie as is. But I have to say, when they do fight, it is hilarious because they are straight up brawls. As I tweeted when the social media embargo lifted, it feels like you're watching bar fights because you have no idea why either Kong or Godzilla are so upset. I mean, there's some flimsy excuse, but you're like, dude, chill. And the fights are just so raw with no finesse and lots of cheap shots. It's hilarious, again, but intentionally so. I mean, the movie is in on the joke, so I thought that was great. Although at one point, Godzilla really disrespects Kong, and I thought he went too far. Although Godzilla really doesn't make an impression in the movie. The movie obviously chooses to focus on, the movie's like Team Kong, even though, Godzilla's in it. That's all I'm going to give away. I know a lot of people have been asking me, does somebody win? Technically, somebody wins. We'll discuss it in the spoiler review. I felt it didn't really. No, I don't think anybody really won. All right, so anyway. The reason that these fights are so believable is because of the amazing visual effects. And the visual effects here are not just good, they are phenomenal. Speaking of the Snyder Cut, this is the same VFX team for the most part. And it's practically in many parts like an animated movie, but a really good one. So many shots are just gorgeous. I mean, they're not only believable, but they're artfully framed, which is really nice to see. I think that the VFX team here goes above and beyond to contribute to the film as artists, and that's really exciting. And on that note, the world building is also excellent. We go to a ton of different locations throughout the movie, and all of them are really interesting and unique and fully realized. The movie, I liked this a lot. The movie applies a Jurassic Park filter to the story, which is very clever, and it makes you wonder why it took so long for Legendary to figure that out. They were like, oh yeah, we're kind of like Jurassic Park too. But while it's a clever idea, it's not particularly well executed, I'm afraid. Jurassic Park is very simple, whereas Godzilla vs. Kong is ridiculously complicated. But we're not to the bad part just yet. So out of the human cast, the standouts are Kaylee Hoddle as Gia. I don't want to give anything away about her character. Again, a lot to discuss in the spoiler review, but I can say here that she has real warmth about her, and she is very charismatic. I really, really liked her. I thought she was fantastic. She was my favorite human. Millie Bobby Brown, and especially when you don't want to see any humans, the fact that you're like, okay, we can have Kaylee Hoddle in there is very, very good for her. Millie Bobby Brown also does a good job. She's very talented, but she and Julian Dennison, unfortunately, not only don't have much to do, but they share all their scenes with Brian Tyree Henry, and no one can compete with Brian Tyree Henry in this movie. He has a very over-the-top role that he does a very good job with. I would say that Brian Tyree Henry actually has the most screen time and the biggest human presence in the film, not just because of the script, but also because he really makes the most of the opportunity. I think I can see a lot of other actors delivering a cringe performance here, but I thought he did a really nice job. I don't want to give anything away, but it was great. I also really enjoyed Demian Bashir getting the opportunity to really chew the scenery as a corporate villain. And I thought casting him in that role was really inspired. I loved it. He was hardly on screen, and I wanted more of him. Now, let's talk about the bad, or the not so good. The script, I'm sorry, it is bad. The script is awful. It's just an awful script. It's gobbledygook. It's just so bad. It's weird to watch a movie work so hard to come up with reasons for why these kaiju would fight each other and then so utterly fail. It's like, why did you try so hard? It makes the failure even more obvious. I would say for almost the entire film, I had no idea what was going on. And when I did, I had no idea why it mattered, or at least it didn't matter to me. Also, I never felt that anyone was in danger, including the kaiju, even though they technically were. Like, my brain knew they were in danger. I was like, oh, okay. But I was like, they're not really in danger. And there are a lot of humans died during this movie. A lot. But I never felt it, not like, interestingly, some of the earlier kaiju movies that Legendary has made. Like, I think the Bryan Cranston one was I don't know, he really sold it with his performance. But here I was like, silly human. What did you think was going to happen when you got involved with this? I would have actually liked to have less scientist story and more about just normal people trying to deal with this. Like, what's it like to live in a world where there are Titan warnings and you have to run for a shelter at any moment? And I don't really think it's going to help you. That was crazy. Again, we'll talk about it in the spoiler review. That interested me more than any of the scientific discussion. Also, speaking of humans, there were just not only too many human scenes, but way too many human characters. Like, how could they even think they would be able to develop all of these? It was ridiculous. As much as I like Alexander Skarsgård, and I think Rebecca Hall, I'm not a huge fan of Rebecca Hall, but I thought having her as a Jane Goodall type figure was a neat idea, and she was well cast in that regard. But their scenes are just needless and wooden. They have no chemistry together. I think they were maybe supposed to have a romantic spark, but it was not there. And then Isa Gonzalez, she looked fabulous, but she's basically playing like Veronica Lodge, but like with none of the nuance of Veronica Lodge, even like in Archie comics. She was like, she didn't have a mustache, but she was twirling her metaphorical mustache as just a ridiculous villain. I was like, no one's that mean. I don't know. Again, we'll talk about it in the spoiler review. At least not like overtly. It was crazy. I also felt that, speaking of crazy, for as crazy and zany as this movie is, especially with the Kong and Godzilla interactions, I wish it had been even crazier. I was like, you guys should just go for it instead of trying to have their cake and eat it too. And be, on the one hand, ridiculous, but then on the other hand, try to copy great blockbusters. Like, not only is Jurassic Park a flavor here, but they've also got shades of Indiana Jones, Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Gorillas in the Mist, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and all the classic kaiju films. They're all mixed in here. And as a result, none of them are done particularly well. It's just too much. You're like, your guys are all over the place. Focus. So Godzilla vs. Kong is a fun popcorn flick. You're gonna get Godzilla vs. Kong. But there's like a whole lot of other stuff in there that they should, I'm surprised, again, that it always amazes me when you see this stuff and you're like, I can't believe none of you could tell this wasn't working and it was bad, because it's bad. But it was fun. Just keep your expectations super low, have tons of snacks, and see it on the biggest screen that you can, that you feel comfortable seeing it on. So that's my non-spoiler review of Godzilla vs. Kong. To be fair, I can't wait to talk to you about it in the spoiler review, which again will go up on Wednesday. Share those thoughts down below. If you've seen the movie, don't spoil it. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.